We're going to be going over what case studies are, how we use them, and as well how you can go about looking for them. So first we're going to start off by looking at some examples of kind of how I look for my case studies, and then at the end I'll have a video kind of going over a little bit more specifically how I'm going through those case studies, what I'm looking for, and as well showing you how I input them into my journal. So starting off, as I said, we're going to go over this example of this trade we caught here, or necessarily not caught, but I'll explain that during the session. But once again, a case study is just going to be when we're cherry picking out an entry, being very specific on what we're looking for as we're going into the markets in general, and then building out some type of a plan so that later on we can look to repeat these entries, right? What this will allow us to do is not only help during our backtesting sessions to make sure that we know what we're actually looking to find in the market, right? But as well, overall, as a trader, will help you become more consistent, because now that you have a plan and understanding of what you're looking for, you can properly adjust at the times when need be, right? So that may be if you know one setup tends to give you a little bit more risk reward than others, maybe you want to risk more on that one and less that tend to be short-term moves, right? As well as for people who are trying to move more into swing trading and they want to move away from that kind of scalp trading, this can be a great way to understand where to bridge the gap, right? Not every move is going to be a move you want to hold all day or all week, so on and so forth, but once again, if you can build steps and understand that ahead of time going into those scenarios, you no longer will be kind of flipping that coin and if you should take profit or not, but you have a clear understanding of where you want to get out of the move based on why you entered the move, right? You should always know where you're looking to get out of the move before you get in. So as I said, these case studies will help you a lot with understanding that. So hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know down below if you like this one, and maybe we'll do another video later on kind of going over how to backtest and create a trade plan using all of the information that we get here in the case studies. frame. It's where I typically like to start my analysis. It's just a good place to understand kind of what the higher time frame is doing, so on and so forth, right? So first thing I kind of see going on here is we're sitting in this overall bearish range. And if we look at this tool right here, that's our premium and discount range. So at the time, and I actually did another case study on this that we'll go over in a second, not a very clean zone or anything that I loved, kind of going on here on the 4 hour or even lower. But regardless, that is the area that it did hit. After seeing that, we see price kind of creates this move back to the downside and then is now returning back into our 4 hour supply. So because we had this nice sweep here and plenty of stuff down to the downside, or this imbalance, whatever you want to call it, right? There's plenty of stuff for us to kind of be targeting and reason for us to start looking down, right? So what we're actually looking for is this entry right here, and we're going to go ahead and hop into how that would look. So 2 ways you can do this. I actually like to take a picture of my case studies before I get into doing stuff. You can also do one after. So in this case, we're going to do a before and a after for all of our time frames. So the first thing we're going to do is go in and plug in our template. And this I had pre-made for me, so this will look a little bit different for everyone depending on what you choose to use. I'm going to delete these time frames because at the moment I do not need them. Now this is going to be my 4 hour, obviously without the position. And do we need one with the position? Not necessarily, but we'll go ahead and do one just so we have it and know what it looks like. Now, the only other things we need to add in on here right now is just what pair we're trading. We know we're looking for a short, right? And we don't have the risk to reward for our position yet, our stop loss size, or really any of the other things. The only thing from a higher time frame we can confirm, right, is not really much. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Not too important yet. We're just getting that first picture in to kind of show what we're doing, right? So as we start moving down to that 15-minute time frame, this is kind of my middle time frame that I usually start doing my analysis. You'll start to see a little bit more of what was going on. So we can see that during that London session, so if we turn on our session indicator real quick, all right, during our London session, we see that price had swept this liquidity over to the left, tapped into some sort of point of interest, and made its way back up, right? We can see that the New York session previously had left a little bit of equal highs over here. So coming into London, there's reason to believe we could sell from this supply, but because of those equal highs, we would actually want to hold off anyways. So in this case, right, we see that happens, right? Price comes up, starts off 830, and we can see we swept that liquidity. So we're going to keep going lower to kind of understand why, but at the same time, starting to take note of what are the areas we would be looking to target, what other possible trades would we see in that area, and things like that, right? So we see a bunch of lows building up here. So this is a bunch of liquidity I would definitely be using as a target, maybe a first target, second, who knows, depends on kind of what the entry looks like. And then as well, maybe we would look at this demand, but overall price is bearish at the time. And I wouldn't really be expecting this to hold if price was to just sweep this and come back down. We can mark it out just for kind of means of watching what happens, but once again, not really something we're going to be interested in. So as we go lower, we're just going to start, one second. So as we go lower, we're just going to start picking apart our time frames and seeing, once again, you want to pay attention to the things that you personally would have most likely seen. So for me, this is kind of just how I look at structure, especially when I'm looking to take an entry before session. I don't really care to get into all the small stuff because I'm looking for the bigger move anyways. So at start, I don't mind not having too much on, right? Because I want that start of session to kind of show me what's going on first. So if we look at what's going on in here, right? We see right before that session was starting up, what was going on, right? Was there any type of clean price action we would want to trade? No, we don't really want buys because of all of these lows stacking up. We already know that. So if anything, we might expect a sweep to the downside, then to go up. But as of right now, there's not really anything telling us we would want to take a trade. And as well, yes, price does take this high, and some may call this a chotch, but it's not really enough for us to want to look to get into that trade. If we look over here to the left, we haven't really mitigated anything. We filled some of this imbalance and swept some liquidity. But once again, price hasn't shown us any reason to really jump into the market here, right? We need to see especially at an open of session, I always want to see some type of liquidity event so that price can reset, right? So that's why we have up here our New York open inducement, right? So with that being said, I would go ahead and hop onto my lower time frame right away. As you can see, nothing was really important to mark up in between all of these except for our 15. So let's actually go ahead and make sure we take a picture real quick. So we have our 15-minute. We're gonna go ahead and throw that in. All right, and now we'll go back to our 1 minute. So on the 1 minute, now I will be watching as session open to kind of see what happens, right? So I'd be able to say, cool, we have this 1 minute break of structure here in case we were looking at the lower demand levels going on in here to see if we wanted to trade that. Some kind of stacked up orders, and this has already been mitigated, so I'd want this taken at least first before I even start to look for an entry. But say we could watch these areas. So we'll go ahead and mark this out, once again assuming that we don't already see that price has gone through there, because obviously we're looking in hindsight, not as price is doing it. So with that being said, up here, right, all right, if we drag this over just to see where it hits, literally spikes those highs perfectly. And then what do we see, right, from that 1 minute perspective? This nice break here. So usually myself personally, especially at the open of session, I'm going to be watching my lower time frames. So I'd probably be on a 15-second at the time, checking to see what happened, right? And that's not the craziest break, but that sweep followed by this volume is enough for me. So I'd just be looking to see where I feel like I would want a clean enough entry, making sure there's no more liquidity left. Cool, right? Go to my 1 minute, and I would enter just off of this POI, right? Seems like a fairly aggressive entry, but once again, it's about all of the confirmations we have from our higher time frame, as well as understanding this sweep that had happened at the time, right? As well, this video isn't necessarily based on understanding why we're taking entries. It's more or less to just show how we're going to go about watching for our case studies and understanding what's going on. So with that being said, now that we've got our entry on, what we're going to start looking to do, right, is understanding our targets. We're going to go ahead and move this to all visibility. Okay, cool. So now that we've gotten into this trade, right, my automatic for most positions is going to be taking my first partials at 1 to 4. So I can do that here, right, and just go ahead and add some type of note, right? I'd say, all right, first partial is taken here, right? I'll just throw something on like 20%, because that's about what I take at 1 to 4. And then I like to leave my position on to kind of do the rest there. So if we start paying attention to kind of what was going on, right, to see, okay, where are our other valid targets? This is a case, right, where we see, okay, we do know we had this 15-minute demand. So really our first target that makes sense would be this demand, or to play it safer, you could use these lows that we knew were stacked up, right? And that would be about a 1 to 7, right? But when I'm looking for my trades, especially if I can catch the open, I'm going to start looking at my 15-minute because I want to see if volume kicks in, right? And in this case, I would have no reason to be looking to get out, right? Especially with the fact that we know there's multiple things we need to hit on our 4 hour, right? As well as how we talked about the 4 hour is already bearish, right? So because I'd be looking for this to get taken out, my target would be either some type of lows in this range, or I would just leave it on to be a swing, right? Take off my first partials at that price target what we talked about of 1 to 4, right? And just let the rest of the swing out, right? So this is obviously something you want to make clear in your case study so that you understand what you are looking to do. But for the means of this, we're just going to say that that's a swing trade, because I always, especially if it is a swing trade in my case studies, I like to take note of that because that allows me to know, once again, when I'm looking for the best prime setup, right, a swing trade that's going to go for my 4 hour break, I can always refer back to something like this, right? So it allows me to build a even stronger confirmations list when I'm looking for my entries, right? So with that being said, that's kind of that case study. So all we have to do now is go back and start logging it, right? So we're going to start from our 4 hour just like we did at first and walking it down, right? Okay, cool. So first things we see from the 4 hour, okay, cool. Our total risk reward on this was 40.88. And obviously we have partials taken, so the actual risk reward takeaway will be a little bit less. But for means of just marking it out, I don't necessarily mind that. If that is something you choose to change, obviously feel free to do so. And we see we're just going to use the 4 hour close on this, but we will use the higher time frame there. So 8 o'clock at January 26th. We're going to include time. And all of this stuff in here, right, is just different factors that I like to have to understand my trades. A lot of trades I take do have a lot to do with timing. I'll open them at specific times of day, so knowing literally the exact moment when my entry hits can be pretty beneficial to me, right? So if we go back here, right, we'll notice, right, one of the strongest confluences beyond anything, right, to take this entry was the fact that it happened right after New York session opened, right? So for me, that shows, okay, we opened up session and we want to make that drop right away, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and look at my entry time, which was 8:40. So we're going to go back here, put in that entry at include time 8:40. Oops. Goodness gracious. Cool. Now that we have that done, I'm going to start adding in my confluences, right? So from a 4-hour perspective, let's see what we had, right? Start back up there and then we'll work our way down. So from a 4-hour, we knew, okay, price, technically our entry is in discounted price action because we had just barely got back above that. So that's one of the confluences I'm going to go ahead and add right away. And these are just different things that work for my strategy. Everybody's will look a little bit different. As well, I have a higher time frame mitigation because we hit that 4-hour supply. Not the strongest supply because we didn't break too much, but we do know it is confirmed on the lower time frame. So I'm okay with that, right? I have my New York inducement for the New York Open, as well as I know this was around New York Open. So I'm gonna add that one in there, right? As well as when we start going lower, we know timing had to do with it because of the session open, right? We see the Asian liquidity had been swept because that was this, if we go down a little bit more, right? So when we go back to that 15-minute, we know this was that Asian liquidity that was left over because we see, well, really actually, apologies, that was not Asian liquidity. So we're going to take that back off, right? This was more just so that New York inducement, right? And we did not have a 15-minute charge. This was all lower time frame. So we know we had our lower time frame refined POI and our lower time frame charge, right? And as well as low time frame mitigation. So those are going to be the factors that go into finding my trade. Now this is going to be my entry model A, because this is what I call my entry model A is practically just session opens where it has a lot to do with kind of that sweep of liquidity. A lot of times there won't be a lot of information in telling you why you're going to take the entry here, but as long as you can understand what these sessions previously have been doing, it will lead to a very nice trade a lot of the time. But it can be a very different trade than kind of how you're going to trade continuation plays and so on and so forth. So that's why I kind of single them out. Now for my trend, right, this is important to understand so I can know, once again, what to be looking for on a higher time frame perspective if I want to catch this trade again, right? We know our 4-hour was overall bearish, right? We know 15-minute had created this break, so 15-minute was bearish. The only thing that was bullish was our lower time frames. So 4-hour bearish, 15-minute bearish, and our lower time frames we could say we're bullish until obviously our 1-minute switches over and we get that change of character. So really that's going to be about it. If anybody wants to, you can always take your 15-minute time frame, go ahead and throw that in for kind of that finished version. Oh, I forgot we didn't even put on the lower time frame, so let me go do that real quick. So yeah, our 15-minute will look like that, right? The 1-minute, we're gonna use this back test to make sure it's easier and doesn't fly away from us. Cool. We'll go back here, right? Now we can see, we're gonna take the screenshot from what that 1-minute looks like, right? Boom, and done with that, right? And I didn't need my seconds on this one, so I'm gonna delete that. Right, and now trade management, my trade management in this trade was 20% off at 124. And I didn't mention it in this one, but break-even criteria, you really could have kind of done this as you wish. But I'm gonna go ahead and say my break-even was at the 1-minute break of structure, or in this case, we can say break of the New York Open. Actually, just to keep it simple, we're gonna say break of 1-minute low. Structure actually. Cool. And then that's really all we need here. Oops, break even at the, I don't know what's going on there. Cool. And then no other notes we really need for this one. So yeah, it's practically going to be how we do our case studies, right? And as I said, what this will allow you to do, right, is start going in and building entry models. So now that you have this done, right, you can literally go back and say, okay, cool. When I'm looking for this type of entry, this is what my 15 minutes should look something like, right? Maybe my 1 minute looks something like this, right? And you can go in as much depth as you need, right? When you're starting out, I suggest put as much as you can in the notes, mark out every single little piece of information you need on your chart, right? And it'll help you just, once again, get used to looking for that same process. So if we move on to kind of some other examples of what some of my case studies look like, right? Here, I think this was a trade that, no. So this was a trade that I took a little bit ago. So this one here, I think I closed out a little bit early, but regardless, the point is to kind of show how this one looks, right? Same thing, tracking when we opened the trade, what type of position it is, how much it made, as well as our confluences. This one was a lot more basic because I was just doing an example, but still gets the point across, right? So if we go down to our 4 hour on this, right, let's go ahead and clean this up. If we go to our 4 hour on this, what we'll see is at the time price was doing what it does, right? It doesn't really matter kind of what it was doing. Once again, a case study is going to be personal for you. You may understand price action in a different way somebody else does, right? So in this case, as I said, it's not a right or wrong thing when you're doing case studies. It's about finding what works for you. So kind of, once again, just getting that point across of showing my different time frames and the things that I was looking for, making sure that I have that in there. And then when I start moving lower, right, showing kind of what price looks like as I'm going to take my entry, right, as well as my lower time frame to understand my confluences that got me into the trade, right? And I actually sent this trade out a while ago. This was a decent trade, but regardless, the point is it gets across where I'm looking to take my partials. This obviously is here because I had already taken this, so it was just a picture of after. But now we can see our final result, where you can kind of go over what else you would want to do, right? So I took off about 20% here, 50% off there, so on and so forth, right? Once again, you get the point, just showing kind of more examples of how that may look for you, right? So hope this video helps a few people. As I said, we may make another video one day going over kind of how to backtest this and turn it into a trade plan. But as of right now, I want you all to kind of practice up making those case studies and let me know if this helps.